The Church's message hasn't changed in over 2,000 years, but the way people receive information has. So how do we communicate the good news in this new landscape? The Association of Roman Catholic Communicators of Canada works to answer this question. Started over 25 years ago, ARC brings together communication professionals from dioceses and Catholic organizations across the country. Regular newsletters keep members up to date on what's happening in the Church across the country. An annual conference brings members together to share experiences and learn from each other.
I'm coming from the Archdiocese of Halifax-Yarmouth.
I'm from the Roman Catholic Diocese of Prince Albert, Saskatchewan.
My name is Lorraine Turchansky, and I am the Communications Director in the Archdiocese of Edmonton.
The Archdiocese of Vancouver extends from roughly Hope in the east to Squamish in the west, covers the lower mainland of Vancouver, British Columbia, and approximately 450,000, 475,000 Catholics.
Each communicator comes with their own challenges and hopes. ARC aims to help them reach those goals. Located in northern Saskatchewan, Prince Albert is home to over 40,000 Catholics spread out from the Alberta border to the Manitoba border and south to Wakaw. 17 of its 87 parishes are on First Nation reserves. Internet helps connect the Catholics of the diocese.
We've had a website for probably, I would say close to about 10 years. We recently, a few years ago, renovated it. Within the last 6 months, we started up Facebook. Now attending the seminar, love to be a little bit more on site and doing videos, even just short ones, just bringing people in, showing them visuals, you know, evoking feelings and stuff, so people feel more a part of the community.
Just next door in Alberta, the Archdiocese of Edmonton has over 370,000 Catholics in 129 parishes, spread out from Jasper in the west to the Saskatchewan border in the east. As part of a 5-year pastoral plan, the Archdiocese started a witness and catechesis session called Nothing More Beautiful. Each month, an invited speaker shares their faith story, and Archbishop Richard Smith provides catechesis. The events are recorded and televised. Still, there's a thirst to reach even more Catholics.
Well, certainly one of the things that we're getting a lot into now is webcasting, and there seems to be a real hunger for catechesis by webcast, especially in an archdiocese like ours, where it's spread out so far from Jasper in the west to Saskatchewan border in the east, and there is a lot of interest in interactive communications. So let's say a live chat during a webcast of catechesis. So we're going to be doing a series of those sessions in the Year of Faith, a series on the Creed, a series on Vatican II, and a series on the Catechism.
On the other side of the country, the Archdiocese of Halifax-Yarmouth has a different challenge. There are over 200,000 Catholics in the Archdiocese, which covers most of Nova Scotia.
We're creating a policy of what we will do in French and what we'll be doing in English. We're not a bilingual diocese. We'll do some things in French and some things in English.
The two-language challenge hasn't stopped the Archdiocese from embracing social media and web videos to keep the Archdiocese connected. Basic videos are posted to the Archdiocesan YouTube channel so all parishioners can hear the latest news for themselves.
As well as we're going to start on Twitter and Facebook. One department has already started doing that, but it's in a focus on one event that's coming up. After that, the communication department will do that, and will be more for the whole diocese.
None of this is new to the West Coast. Still, there's always room to grow in the Pacific Diocese, where there are over 450,000 Catholics to reach who speak 21 different languages.
Archbishop Miller he's pretty forward-thinking when it comes to communications, the use of social media. So all of those, a number of initiatives have begun under him. and so we're happy to sort of move things forward in a number of areas. Social media, we've been out there for a couple of years now. We were on Facebook quite early. We're Twittering, or tweeting as it's called. We're on YouTube. A lot of this is still early days and we're still learning a lot of it.
The Archdiocesan newspaper has the widest circulation of Canadian diocesan papers. Published weekly in English, it includes a page in Chinese. For the younger generation, the Archdiocese has a Facebook page, Twitter page, and YouTube channel. Certain departments have their own social media channels.
Obviously, we'd like to expand because there's more work than any person can possibly do. Fortunately, we have a communications advisory board, and we're currently working on a communications strategy for the Archdiocese. Social media will be an important part of that.
Some ARC members, like the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops, have a wider mandate and bigger needs.
So my name is René Laprise. I'm the Communication Officer at the CCCB, Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops. Our link with the diocese, the Communication Officer in the diocese, and the people working in the Catholic press, even radio, television, and paper press. It's important because it's like the first collaborator that I can count on to spread the good news.
The CCCB uses social media, but relies on relationships with television and radio outlets in different areas to tell the country what its bishops are doing.
Maybe people are not used to that, but I think it's important to show that there is other way to spread the gospel.
And you just saw the different communication directors from across Canada who are gathered at the annual meeting of the Association of Roman Catholic Communicators of Canada. They were telling us a little bit about what they do in their diocese to get the message out. Now, joining me in studio are two heavyweights in the world of Catholic communication. I have Joanne McGarry of the Catholic Civil Rights League and Josina Zak, who is the publishing director of Novalis and the president of the Association of Roman Catholic Communicators of Canada. So thank you, both of you, for joining me. And I should point out that you were both at one point publishers and editors of the Catholic Register in Toronto.
Well, fairly close anyway.
Yeah, we both worked there at different times.
That's at one point. So you've both been working in this field in communication in the Catholic Church in Canada for about 25 years, if not more. Tell me what it was like. Paint a picture for us of what it was like when you first started.
Well, I would say there were fewer vehicles. I mean, you had the Catholic press, and you had religion reporting in daily newspapers. In terms of the Church's response to that, I would say, generally speaking, it was reactive and usually negative. And certainly the biggest single change that I have seen in the past 30 years is that there's much more outreach now on the Church's part, much more a greater sense of the importance of communications. And in some dioceses, certainly in this one, they're doing it well.
Well, I came to the Register in 1995 after some 15 years in secular newspaper publishing. So it was quite interesting at the time because friends of mine at the newspaper I worked for said to me, well, why are you getting out of journalism? And I had to explain to them that this was just a different kind of journalism. It did the same thing that journalism does anywhere. It serves a community of people. It allows an expression of range of expression of opinion and that kind of thing, but within a certain framework. That is, this is the community that it represents. Much like the ROB represents the business community in Canada, we saw ourselves as serving the entire Catholic community. One of the big differences from 1995 to now is, of course, proliferation of the internet. I mean, in '95 there was no internet as far as Catholic communications was concerned. I still remember us bringing email into the office, and this was this great revolution, you know, and we still had little floppy disks that we would put our stories on and move them from one computer to the next. So the creation of the internet, the democratization of voices on the internet has created a sea change in terms of how journalism is practiced and how the sort of public opinion is formed in Canada. And that's meant a big change for Catholic journalism, not just in Canada, but around the world. in that we are constantly reacting to a much, much wider range of voices than we ever did before, and having to do some real discernment about judging the authority of those voices. And that's much, much more difficult than it ever was before.
So with the internet, with the advent of the internet, we also get social media. We get social networks like Facebook and Twitter, and we get blogs. Two things that from what you were saying, sparked in my mind, Joe. One, the message is not restricted anymore. You're saying, Joanne, that there were far less vehicles to get the message across 20, 30 years ago. So how has social media revolutionized the way that the message travels, or the scope where this message can go that at one time maybe was restricted?
Well, the challenge is that there is no one message anymore. Or certainly you can't control the message the way you once did. At one point you could have a fair level of certainty that when you sent out the message it would fall into the ears and the hands of a certain number of professional journalists who had professional standards that they adhered to and certain sort of rules of the game that they tried to adhere to. Now it doesn't matter whether you're the Vatican, the Canadian Bishops' Conference, or an individual archdiocese. You are dealing with a whole plethora of receivers who will interpret that message in any number of ways, and you simply cannot control all of them. And so you have to be much, much more certain about what it is you're trying to do with your message and about the clarity of that message. I could say that as a start anyway.
No, I think I agree with what Joe has said. And also with the proliferation of websites and YouTube's networks and so on, critical thinking, critical evaluation has always been very important, but it's vital now. I mean, you don't know who you're listening to.
Right.
You know, people can present themselves, and many do, as the authentic Catholic voice, and if you point out to them that they have no authorization, or that the bishop's office had never heard of them, you'll get an answer like, well, if he was any kind of a bishop, he would listen to me. It's made, social media is a wonderful thing. Couldn't work without it, but it's made it a lot easier to set up a real cacophony out there, and you just have to evaluate it as best you can. Well,
this, to me, in my mind, raises another interesting dilemma. So if you are an archdiocese or a diocese, if you are a Catholic organization, a religious order, or Catholic Civil Rights League, how do you make sure that the information you're putting out there, or how do you attempt to communicate whatever it is you're trying to communicate in such a way that it will have authority?
Well, it's relatively easy for the organization, because I know who we are, and I know what our positions are, and I communicate them as best I can. I don't think the problem's on that side. I think anyone who wants to read to the bottom of an article, for example, will find out that we're an independent organization. We're not any sort of arm of the official church. But there are people who present themselves as though they were, and that's just something the consumer has to be aware of.
Does that also present a new problem, a new challenge that you risk getting lost in the plethora of voices out there?
I think if you are the consumer of the news, sure. I think the church as a whole, especially the authorities of the church, have to get over this idea that you can control the message. Because once you've released the message, you can't control it. Right. You can only ensure that the message is well crafted and that you have a really good understanding of how it can play out in the media, and you deal to the strengths of the media you're trying to use, whether it's video, whether it's, it could be YouTube, it could be Twitter, it could be Facebook, blogging, newspapers for that matter, because newspapers are not going away regardless of what people say. Yeah. So you have to, first of all, forget about this idea that somehow you can eliminate all chance of people saying negative things about your message. You cannot. So you just have to ensure that you understand the amount of weight to give the different message bearers, if I could put it that way, and judge them accordingly.
So if you had all the communication directors for all the different religious organizations and dioceses in Canada in a room in front of you, captive audience, and you had to give them a toolkit. What would you say, what would your toolkit be?
Well, we'll start with the assumption that this person's a trained communications professional, so they have some idea of what the message is that they're trying to get out and what the best means are for doing that. With that, with that assumption in place, I would just say keep it simple, be positive, be proactive, and remember that you cannot control anyone's response but your own. Can't control anyone's message but your own. And once you've made the decision that you're going to communicate with the press, you can't control it beyond that point. It's your decision if you want to work with the press or not. You don't have to. But once you've decided you're going to, you have to realize you're on their schedule.
I think for starters, they have to know their stuff. Mm-hmm. They have to know the Christian story. They have to be able to articulate it convincingly. There's nothing worse than somebody who comes across as very hesitant or very unsure of themselves and doesn't have a good understanding or a good grasp of the facts that they're trying to present. So that's a good start. And secondly, you have to have a thick hide.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We've both got great inboxes.
You have to be willing to kind of go with the flow and know that there will be people who your message is going to appeal to, and there will be people who will dislike your message intensely. Mm-hmm. Right. And you just have to know that this is the territory you're working in. You
have to know they're all going to interpret it in their own way. I'm sure you've found this over the years too. Most people are not big on nuance, and they're really not big on reading to the end.
That's true. You know? I struggle with that with emails. You know?
Yeah, anything over 4 lines, you're really taking your chances.
Yeah.
But the one thing I'm hearing, though, as big as these challenges are, as much as once upon a time we could control how our message was going to be received and count on the fact that they were professionals receiving the message and they knew what to do with it. As you said, they knew they were playing within a certain set of rules. As much as today there is this possibility to be misinterpreted or to get lost among the voices, it sounds like really we have to do this. Whether it's a diocese, whether it's a religious order, whether it's an independent Catholic organization, we have to engage with media. We have to engage with all the different types of media that are coming to us.
I'd add a couple little points about that too. You asked about the toolkit. A couple practical tools that you should have is a YouTube and a website. A place where you can put the actual documentation, so it's on the record, it's out there. If people actually want to go to the source, they can find the source easily. And YouTube is a way to get around the interpreters as much as anything. It provides you a way to have someone on camera delivering the story in person. And I think if I were to pick sort of 2 media to work on that you would say are definite must in the toolkit, those would be them.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any?
Yeah, and I think for most organizations, a Facebook page is really good too, because you can use it to reach people you wouldn't normally reach, and perhaps you could, and this would vary with the organization, but for things like polls and contests, it gives you a way to do that your own website may not provide.
Just before we sign off here, I want to give you the chance to talk a little bit about ARC, about the Association of Roman Catholic Communicators of Canada. Just quickly, what it is and how many people belong to it and what it does.
Okay. It's an organization that has been around for more than 25 years now. It was an attempt to provide a place for professionals in Catholic communications in Canada, mostly at the diocesan level, but it expanded beyond that, to get together and do some common reflection about what they were about, but also do some professional development, help them raise the standards of communications in the church across the country. Over the years, the membership has ebbed and flowed. The actual number of people engaged in Catholic communications in this country has always been small and remains so. I think our membership is about 50 people right now. But all the key dioceses in the country are involved. A number of the bishops have memberships, and quite a few of the Catholic communications outlets have memberships as well. And so I think it provides a national place for communicators to share their frustrations, share their challenges, share their triumphs, and find out that they're not alone in what they do. and that's important.
Great. Well, thank you both for joining me for this conversation today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions or comments, you can write to us at focus@saltandlighttv.org. For Catholic Focus, I'm Alicia Ambrosio saying see you next time.